Hi, this is Rob Sheen with the Source Conference, and I'm here with Lester Godsey, and he is the CISO of Mesa, the City of Mesa. And we're going to be having a Source Conference in Mesa at the end of February, on February 28th and March 1st. And Lester's going to be speaking there, and we'd like to talk today about his talk. So welcome, Lester.
All right, thanks.
So your talk is titled Cybersecurity Program, We Don't Need No Stinking Cybersecurity Program. So can you tell us a little bit about the title and what your talk's about?
Well, unfortunately, I try to relate everything in life to movies, so the latter part of my talk title, I'll leave that to your own investigation and Googling. But the purpose of my presentation is to talk about, regardless of whether you're a small organization, a one-man shop, or a very large organization with dedicated cybersecurity staff, everybody needs some context and some organization and planning when it comes to a holistic approach to cybersecurity.
Okay, great. So the one thing I really noticed that stood out from your talk title and your description was the difference between, whether you're a big shop or a little shop, still being able to do some of the same things. So what are some of the commonalities, whether you have a big budget or no budget?
Well, first and foremost, the biggest commonality is the fact that regardless of one's organization size, everybody still has the same problems. Everybody still has the same challenges. And so while we may not have the same budget, the same resources available to us, depending on our situation, there are certain things that we can and I propose that we should be focusing on regardless of our size. Um, so, for example, not to give too much away, and I'm trying to encourage people to attend the talk itself, is to do things such as not just focus on prevention, for example. And a security program should be focused on the fact that it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when your security is going to be compromised. So if you take that into consideration as you plan for how your cybersecurity program is going to be developed for your organization, then you're one step ahead of the game.
Great. So the not if it's when thing is an important point, I think, that I'd like to riff off a little bit. I see a lot of organizations that seem to really want it to be, adding security equals we're not going to have an incident. How do you manage those expectations with folks throughout the organization, either kind of up or down, just that these things will happen?
Sure. And again, this you just touched on something else that regardless of size, this is an important conversation to have, and it's important to have this conversation with the right folks within your organization. So whether you're in a small business of 10 people or you're working for a city like myself with 4,200 employees and elected officials and things of that sort, the same conversation needs to occur, which is, and the way I handle that is, there's too many variables, frankly, for anybody or cybersecurity program to account for to ensure that there's zero possibility that you're going to have a breach from a security perspective. I have also used a conversation about how these multi-billion-dollar organizations, frankly, with all the resources available to them, they have still had a number of breaches. So it's not a problem that you can buy your way out of, I guess, and that's a common thread across the board. One thing I would like to emphasize in conversations I've had, and I've worked for smaller organizations before, your size or anonymity in regards to the rest of the environment is no guarantee that you're not going to be a target either. So I think it's important for very small organizations, and I would encourage them to be cognizant of this, that just because they're not a target or a large organization doesn't mean they're not an attractive, no pun intended, target for cybercrime.
Right. So how do you actually get that message out to people? Do you run some kind of an awareness program? What's your been experience with that? It's kind of especially, big shop versus little shop, because I know there's definitely differences in how they roll out training and things.
Sure, absolutely. We've taken a multi-pronged approach along those lines. We have done what you would consider your traditional security awareness, taking advantage of those opportunities. So for the last couple of years, every October, which is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we'll host a booth at our benefits fair, actually, for the City of Mesa, where we hand out materials, things of that sort. But we also do monthly phishing exercises. I do quarterly updates with my CIO, our ITD department. So we provide quarterly updates to our city manager's office, where cybersecurity is a very high priority, and we always provide them data along those lines. Additionally, and as part of my talk about the cybersecurity program itself, that's also factored in as well. So it's one of those things where, regardless of your size, this needs to be a facet of your program. So it's not just about next-gen firewalls. It's not just about advanced endpoint software technologies implemented in your environment, but it's also having a conversation with the owner of your 10-man business or your CEO or whatever the case is. You need to find a way to have that conversation, and at the same time ensure that you demonstrate that you have a program in place that addresses those concerns, not just from prevention, but from remediation, from security education as well.
Yeah, you definitely hit on something I like there, which is that a big part of the solution is the people, not just the big shiny boxes. Those are cool, but that only gets you so far generally.
Right.
So when you're rolling stuff like this out, are you mostly hitting the leaders in the company or the organization, or are you trying to hit the end users as well?
We try to do all of the above. So in our instance, we definitely, there's something to be said from this message coming from the top down. So there's definite benefit to that. But at the same time, like you alluded to, it's a people issue, I should say, in a lot of instances. So in addition to our city management in our instance, we talk to representatives. We have a group that's called IT liaisons, so representatives from each department within the organization, where IT communicates through them and lets them know what we're doing, what's going on. I leverage that group. We also have pocket little education classes, 15, 20 minutes, where if you're interested in a particular topic, so for example, our single sign-on solution that we use, or the video-based training on phishing and things of that sort. So we do anything and everything in between. So upper management to middle management, all the way to the individual staff.
That's great. Yeah, you definitely hit on something that I have found to be a challenge in some organizations, which is the top-down element of security. Because I've been saying this for years. Grassroots is great, but if the people at the top aren't saying the right things and doing the right things, then people aren't going to do it. So, have you found any good ways to educate the upper management so that they are willing to support the organization and do security correctly?
Sure. So this might be one of the challenges, especially if you're a smaller organization where you don't have a lot of resources. This could be an issue. But what I have found particularly effective is having clearly measurable metrics in terms of security performance, and using that data to drive home the message of what the security posture is, what the organization's risk is, and using that to frame the story when I have the conversation with the city manager or the CIO or whoever the individual might be, council member. And so a good example of that is email spam has been a recent point of conversation within our organization. So I've been able to use the data that we've collected. We're fairly a mature organization when it comes to some of the tools and the metrics to demonstrate, even though we have all these preventative measures in place, we calculate somewhere in the ballpark of 80% of our threat comes from email. And so we're able to articulate of those how many emails we receive, of those how many were delivered to our environment, so we can tell how our third-party provider, and I won't mention names, their spam filtering is working and why we need additional security along those lines. So in a lot of instances, I've found a lot of success by providing data and some anecdotal information or stories as well too. So that seems to have gone a long way. So much so that just a couple months ago, our city managers recognize that this is cybersecurity should be one of our top priorities and has mandated cybersecurity training to all employees. So, and again, that sends a clear message from the top down that the city manager in this instance is very concerned about cybersecurity, and we're taking those mandatory steps to lessen the likelihood of having breaches.
Well, that's a great preview of your talk, so I'm looking forward to seeing the full thing. So, again, you have a question?
No, I was just going to say I'm not going to mention what the latter half of my title is unless you show up to the talk, and then I'll disclose what movie I pulled that from.
Pretty sure I know which movie that came from, but I won't give it away.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm a classic movie fan myself.
Mm-hmm.
So so please join us at the Source Mesa Phoenix conference at on February 28th and March 3rd, and I'm sorry, February 28th to March 1st. And the information for the conference is at sourceconference.com. So hopefully we'll all see you there soon.
Great. Thanks.
All right. That was pretty painless. Yeah, I'll just chop it off there and add a little,
Yeah.
beginning and end, and then we'll be good. So cool. Thanks. I assume here, I'll turn the recording off now.